Hello, welcome back to Line in the Mirror. I'm your host, Brian Plemmonds. I'm a writer, a veteran, a father, and a husband. And I'm a man who spent a lifetime wrestling with failure, purpose, and becoming the version of myself that I like to call the me that must be. On this show, I sit down with people who failed, rebuilt, and found their way forward with grit and with grace. We talk about the fracture that shaped them, the ones they didn't ask for, and the wisdoms those wounds carved into who they are now. If you're listening, you're not afraid of the hard road. You know, failure is not the end, it's the forge. Today's guest is someone whose story matters, not because it's perfect, but because it's true, it's real. So, with that, let's get into it. Let me introduce our guest for today, Pam Hurley. She is the founder and CEO of Hurley Write. Incorporated is a company that specialized in teaching professionals to write more effectively, enunciate, Brian, for more than 30 years. Hurley writes in a certified woman-owned business. Hooray for the women! Like to read that as being a father of four daughters. As one of the top 100 small businesses in North Carolina by Business Leader magazine. So a very successful business. Pam is known for energetic, no nonsense teaching style, something I've experienced firsthand. And her workshops show professionals how to use critical thinking and strategy to make writing easier and more effective. Before Hurley Write, Pam was a college professor who noticed her technical students struggling with writing, and she had a light bulb moment that writing could be taught as a problem solving skill. She took a leap of faith, left academia, and started Hurley Write from scratch, cold calling local businesses to offer writing workshops. Today, Pam's team is helping employees at world-class companies like Pfizer, Meta, and Apple. I'm excited to talk with her about how she turned a classroom frustration into a successful business, the challenges she overcame along the way, and the wisdom she's gathering in her journey. So, Pam, welcome to Line in the Mirror, and thanks
Thank
for
you very much.
being
That's
today.
quite the intro. Wisdom, I don't know, is accurate, but
I think it's accurate. So let me ask you, let me start with this because there's a couple accolades that were listed on your LinkedIn that I didn't mention. I want to start by mentioning those. And it was first, okay. You are a mediocre pickleball player.
mediocre,
Yeah.
yes.
So how do you judge mediocre from?
Well, some days I'm a phenom. I mean, I was out there earlier last week, and I was like, "Yeah, I got this. I figured it out." And then today I'm out there and I'm just playing like crap. So that's mediocrity. Mediocrity is the lack of consistency. So some days I'm great, most days I suck. So yeah,
That's a balance, right? So
there's a balance.
second, and maybe even more importantly, you won your second grade dance contest.
Yeah.
Tell me about that a little. What's your favorite dance step?
Well, that was back in the day, and the pony was very popular. So I was up there doing the pony.
I don't remember the pony. You might have
Well,
to.
you're younger than I am.
Is it just this? Is it just this?
No, you go like this.
Oh, okay, got it. Okay, got it.
People who are as old as I am will remember. But yeah, I won my second grade dance contest. So it was quite the accolade to win that.
So I really loved what you did there with LinkedIn, where you added in a little bit of what I would call personality, and what that it makes me want to ask you a question, which is, what is it today, right, that most professionals take too seriously?
I would say they're probably themselves. I mean, and I think you see this quite a bit on LinkedIn, the folks who just feel like you don't. So I think on LinkedIn we're beginning to see a lot of, and I know everybody talks about the AI, we see the AI drivel, but I also think that there are people who are afraid to let their human side show, their personality. And that's what I was trying to do by changing my to mediocre pickleball player and second grade dance contest, so that people could see my humor, which can be very difficult to show. I guess, I feel like people just sometimes just lighten up. I mean, not everything is a a huge deal. Just lighten up sometimes. I mean,
Exactly. Yeah, I agree with that. And that's one reason why I think this podcast, at least to me, is an interesting topic where, it's not what I would call success theater. Hopefully at the end of
yeah, yeah.
the show, there's a conversation about success and redemption and how you learn from the bumps in the road.
Yeah,
But
everything's and I guess on LinkedIn and all of these social media platforms, you can be whatever you want to be. You can say whatever you want to say, and there's
exactly.
nobody to question you or test that or anything. And so I think there's some people that get so wrapped up in trying to sell or whatever. And I think we're all trying to sell something, whatever that may be, but they get so wrapped up in that they forget to be human.
It reminds me of a story where a guy got on LinkedIn. I can't remember if it was a tech guy or if it was a comedian. It might have been a comedian, but he got on LinkedIn and he listed his job title as CEO of LinkedIn. He was getting all these questions and all these followers. Of course,
That's
he
great.
wasn't the CEO of LinkedIn, but
That's great. But that's a perfect example of you can say whatever you want to say. I mean, you can say whatever you want to say, and there's nobody to question any of that. That's great.
so Pam, let's move into your business a little bit. Let's
Okay.
talk to me a little bit about professional writing, technical writing, scientific writing. What do most professionals in the workspace just fail to understand about technical writing?
That it is a very much a part of their work. They see it as something that is divorced from what they do, their real jobs. And so consequently, they treat it as secondary, they treat it as an afterthought instead of understanding that it is very much a part of the document is the deliverable. So it doesn't matter what you do in the lab, in your office, whatever the case may be. If you can't convey that to your intended reader, then it really doesn't matter. And so, and the unfortunate thing is that's kind of how it's, well, I wouldn't say kind of, that is how it's taught in academia as a secondary, you got to take English 101 and 102, and then maybe take writing for engineers or technical writing or whatever, depending on your major. But it's stupid. It's a dumb way to approach it, because if you don't see it as part of your work and you don't treat it as part of your work, you treat it as an afterthought, or you hate it. I mean, most professionals, they hate writing. They just absolutely detest it. And so consequently, they procrastinate, they don't do a good job. But if you get into the mindset of this is part of my work and it's an integral part of my work, and change that mindset, then you can improve your skills. But again, most people don't see it that way. They see it as something that they have to do, but they don't want to do.
And what would you say to someone that says, if you look at even elementary education now, it's my understanding they don't teach them how to cursive write. And there's some conversation about we're not going to teach them how to write, we're just going to teach them how to type.
Yeah, yeah.
So what's your thought process in responding to professionals when they say things like, why do I need to write? I have AI.
Yeah. No, that's a really good question. AI can't think. You can think. You're a critical thinker. And it worries me, and not just because this is the business I'm in, but it worries me that we are very willing to give up our critical thinking, right, to a machine that can't think. So we were talking to a prospect a couple of weeks ago, engineering. We're using AI, everything's great, it's faster, super. It's faster, but it may not be better, A. And then B, does it reflect your organization and the professionalism of your team, of the people who are working for you? So it concerns me a great deal that we are very willing to give up critical thought, which essentially is what writing is. Writing is thinking on paper. Philosophers have said this for hundreds of years, that were very, very willing to give that up for the sake of speed. And I was reading something, a LinkedIn post this morning, and this one was said, I am not willing to turn my brain into mush because I need, my brain is the most important thing I have. And it's just like wearing a helmet when you ride a motorcycle. It's the most important thing you have. And why are you willing to give up that critical thinking to a machine? And then the second part of that is, even if you think about, okay, so, writing and then, being able to communicate, that kind of thing, you're willing to give that up. I cannot imagine that would not affect other areas of your work where you have to problem solve.
Right.
Because if you're not working through that writing problem, because that's what writing is, it's a problem. Who am I writing to? What am I trying to achieve? And how do I get there? That's the writing problem. If you're not willing to work through that problem, then what other problems are you not willing to work through? So it concerns, I'm not against AI. It's a great thought partner. It can do all kinds of great things for you, but it can't think. And because it can't think, it can't write. So that's my thoughts about that.
So professional writing, what do you feel like in general that it lacks today?
I think it lacks an obvious reader and an obvious outcome. And so what I mean by that is that when you pick up any piece of writing, you should know immediately who it's written for, and you should know immediately what it is that the reader is supposed to do. And those are the things that they're often lacking. People tend to write too much, what I call overwriting. We talk to a lot of companies about even reversing how they organize their documents, how they organize their reports, because you got to read all this junk. And then you get to the meat at the very end, instead of being, well, people are busy. And we know now that most people aren't even reading at all, right? They go to the recommendations or whatever it is. So why wouldn't you put that first? Why wouldn't you make it easy for readers? And that's what a lot of writers don't do. That's what a lot of organizations look at their templates. They're not making it easy for readers. They're just doing, this is what we've always done kind of idea.
Yeah, and I think that moves us in pretty good in this next segment of questions, which is, you started in academia and moved on to Hurley Wrights. Tell us what drove you to leave the classroom and get into the boardroom.
$36,000 is what, I'm not kidding. So this is what happened. I was teaching in academia. I was working my ass off. I was teaching five sessions, 5 courses a semester plus summer school. And this was back in the, I guess, 80s. And I was making like $18,000 a year, some horse shit. It was awful. It was just awful. No insurance, nothing. You just work your ass off and hope for the best. And so there was one of my colleagues, so this not guidance counselor, but student advisor position became available. And it was between me and this other woman. And they gave it to her, and it was $36,000 a year. And I'm like, you know what? I'm done. I'm working my ass off. So I'm going to I'm going to take my the stuff I've been teaching in my technical writing work class, which I developed myself for my folks who weren't English majors. The problem with English, with writing courses in academia, is they're made for English majors. They're not made for people who aren't English majors. And so I was like, this is crap. And so I just started making cold calls, and I was like, if I can make $36,000 a year, I will be very happy. And that was, so a couple things drove me that. But at the end of the day, it was being treated like shit and not making enough money. And I was like, I have nothing to lose.
So what was when you say, let me back up just a minute. When you say you had nothing to lose, right? Let me ask you about that just a little bit, because a lot of people say that, and it can almost be a little cliche. I had nothing to lose, but did you have anything to lose at that point, from the standpoint of family, from the standpoint of there's obligations financially to drive us. Was there anything in your life at that point where you did stand to lose something if it didn't
Well,
go well?
I mean, I had, so my mother, I've discussed this. My mother was murdered when I was 17 years old. My father
Right.
pretty much abandoned my little sister and I at that point. We were actually, after my mom died, my little sister and I were living in an apartment by ourselves. I was 17, she was 15. My dad had already met another woman, so he's across the hall in this apartment, this apartment building. And my point here is I had zero guidance. I didn't know
Mm.
what the hell I was. My parents never said, "Oh, you're going to college." Now, my brother, sure, he's going to college. Never, never did either one of them say to me, "You're going to college, you're smart, let's go to college, blah, blah, blah." So I went to UNC Greensboro, spent 2 years there. Then I decided on a whim, because again, no guidance, that I wanted to transfer to Chapel Hill and major in public health. Why? No idea. I was really into
Right.
nutrition at UNC Greensboro. Go to Chapel Hill, and Jesus, I was putting myself through school because my dad refused to pay for me to go to college. The summer before I'm supposed to go to UNCG, he says, "I'm not going to pay for you to go to school." So I had to find
Mm.
a job at UNCG. I worked in the library. I made it work. Went to Chapel Hill. Well, the money that I was making at UNCG, I couldn't get a job on campus at Chapel Hill, so I got a job working at Red Lobster. Got a job waitressing. I also worked for a little bit as a as a crepe maker. Which, looking back on that, I'm like, how the hell did that happen? But
Like
anyway,
a like an egg crate maker? What do you mean by
yeah,
crate
you had
maker?
the little griddle and the whole.
Oh,
I
okay.
I didn't last very long at that job. There's some jobs I didn't last long at, but that was one of them. So I went to, worked at Red Lobster, and between the work and the money and everything else, I flunked out of Chapel Hill, and didn't, I just flunked out. So at that point, my husband now, he wasn't my husband then, was at UNCW. So I moved to Wilmington and lived there. And then a few years later, after my son was born, I decided to go back to school, and they put me on probation. UNCW put me on probation and let me in, and I excelled, and I did very, very well. But it was just, I just had zero guidance. I didn't know what I was doing. I mean, I just was like, got to do something because I'm not going to live here. And so I just, I applied. I think I applied to two colleges, UNC Greensboro and UNC Chapel Hill, as a senior in high school, and I got into one of them, didn't get into the other. So I was like, well, let's just do that. But
Right. But then you did transfer to UNC, but
I did transfer to UNC, and then I flunked out after a year.
and the flunking out after a year, I mean, what do you feel like is the driver for that? Was it interest level in the program? Because
Oh
you know,
God, yeah, yeah, because it was math. I had no idea. See, but that's what I mean. I had no preparation for anything. Nobody prepared me. Nobody said to me, "Hey, math maybe isn't your strong suit. Maybe, I I did so much, as a teenager, and and throughout my entire childhood, just by the seat of my pants, because I just didn't have any guidance, and I certainly didn't have any guidance when I went to college. But yeah, it was
mm,
like, oh, there's math. Well, shit, I don't do I don't do math, and so yeah, that's why I flunked out. Between that and just, I was working at Red Lobster just every night trying to just make ends meet. I had to pay rent, and so I just flunked out.
what was it about? You said that you got there, it was math, and you understood like math. I'm not right. What was it that you were good at? Did you have any idea at that time what it
Well,
was
I
that you
not Not really. So when I was at UNC Greensboro, I was really into nutrition, really liked those classes. And then I was really into anthropology, loved anthropology. And there was a woman at the time at UNC Greensboro who was into forensic anthropology. And so they look at footprints and,
Mhm.
it's kind of like the stuff that they do now with forensics and stuff. And she was kind of I can't remember her name now, but she was working on a murder case and she showed me the footprints and that kind of fun stuff. And I thought that was very intriguing. So why I didn't stay and do that, but I just felt like I had to go. I felt like I had to transfer. I don't know why I felt like I had to transfer, but I did. And it was awful.
Yeah.
I couldn't get a place on campus because I was a transferring junior. They didn't have room. So I met this woman who had a trailer and she was incredibly religious. And
Yeah.
so my husband, who's, was my boyfriend at the time, was coming over and spending the night. Well, she didn't like that shit at all. So anyway, after a few weeks or months, I don't remember what it was now, I finally found an apartment with a woman who was a math graduate student. And she and I got along great. She was awesome, but it was an awful experience. And then I didn't have a car and we were way out in the boonies in this stupid trailer. And so I wanted to, a former employer I had in Wilmington had a Volkswagen and I wanted to buy the Volkswagen for like $500. I forget what it was some cheap amount. So I go to my dad and I said, can I borrow the money? He said, absolutely not, because he was just a jerk. My dad was a jerk, asshole,
Mm.
whatever you want to call him. But anyway, but he said, here's what I'll do for you. You can drive the motorhome. We had a Winnebago and you can drive the Winnebago. If you've never been to Chapel Hill, and I know you have, but if you've never been to Chapel
No.
Hill, driving a Winnebago in Chapel Hill doesn't work, doesn't work very well. So, oh, it was awful. I mean, so I did
Yeah.
that for a little bit, but it was just like, oh my God, thinking back on that, parking that damn thing. I mean, it it was awful. But anyway, that's the story. So I ended up dropping out because I just couldn't afford it and my grades were awful.
All right. And then when you went to Wilmington, is that when you took up more of the writing topic?
Yeah, so when I went to UNCW and they let me on probation, and I happened to have a professor, Dr. Barbara Waxman, and just really wonderful professor, and just really opened up a lot of doors for me, a lot of international literature, really had a lot of faith in me, and she really propelled me to success, if you will, or got me to really consider that I could do other things, that I could succeed. And so
Mm.
I finished my undergraduate with at UNCW, and then I went ahead and finished my master's as well. And she was an incredible influence, incredible woman.
Prior to meeting her, did you feel like you had an interest in writing prior to that?
Yeah, I used to write a lot of poetry when I was a teenager. I wrote a lot of poetry and read a lot. And I have always been a big reader and that kind of thing. So yeah, so I always had an interest in it. Never thought really about majoring in it, but yeah, I definitely had an interest in it.
Do you feel like we hear you loud and clear on your upbringing, and it sounds like it was rough times. Do you feel like there was something that this professor um, maybe saw in you that hadn't been seen yet?
I think so. I think she realized, I mean, growing up, I mean, there was no doubt in my mind that I was smart. I mean, that was never in question. I mean, I always knew that I was smart. But I think she made me believe that my intelligence um could be used, is the wrong word, but that I could use my intelligence to excel and to do bigger things. I guess is the best way to put it. I mean, she had a lot of faith in me. She helped me a lot. She was a great mentor, and just exposed me to things that I had never really been exposed to. But I think with her, it was the support, that I felt, how it is when you go to school, you have professors who are very dismissive, and then you have professors who give you the time of day and who treat you as though your opinions are valued. And as well as I do, especially when you go to graduate school and the pool becomes, much smaller and the classes become much smaller, how important that is. And she was always, I really felt like most of the people in that department were really, really good, really good folks. I had a good relationship with them. Of course, I was an adjunct at the time, so essentially slave labor, but they were all very, one of the guys helped me publish my first article and really, pushed me to do that. So I guess I had this feeling in that department that I could be successful, and that my thinking was very valuable. So
do you feel like it was more the people or more the subject matter that drove you?
So I'll give you my dissertation was on female erotica.
Okay.
And so it was erotic
Written
literature.
by females.
Well, not all of it. Like Henry Miller was part of what I wrote about how women were talked about, written about. Some of it was female, written by females. Some of it was less. Ethan Frome was one of the novels that I talked about, because there's a lot of subtle sexuality in that. So what I was trying to talk about is the literature, because there's not a lot of erotic literature written by women, right, that I was looking at. So what I was trying to talk about was how the differences between literature, erotic literature that is written for women, and the erotic literature that is written for men about women. So there were two divergent kinds of paths. And so
Got it.
I, wrote the dissertation and all that. And then I wanted to teach a class, wanted to develop a class and teach it. And so the chair of the department was like, it makes me really nervous to do this and blah, 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 blah. And I was like, well, I'm going to do it. I want to do it. And so they finally acquiesced and let me do it. But he was on pins and needles the entire time. He was very concerned that that there would be some, I don't know, protest or whatever. But I loved it. I felt so, I loved it because it made me, because I felt rebellious, and I've always loved being rebellious throughout my entire life. I've always been rebellious. I've always ignored the status quo. I mean, I remember when I graduated from high school, I wore jeans to the graduation. Women didn't do that back then, right? You had to wear a dress. I remember one of the teachers coming up to me, she goes, "Don't you think you should be wearing something else?" I was like, "Nope, this is what I'm wearing." But it was that kind of thing. I always felt, I've always been rebellious, and so anyway, that course, I won't tell you what I wrote on the board the very first day, but that's a story for another time. But it was great. I loved teaching it, because I loved the rebelliousness of it. And I also love the way that, and it was mostly women in the course. I just love the way the women responded, because it was just, I mean, this was, like I said, mid to late 80s, I guess.
Right.
And it wasn't, people didn't talk about things like that, but it allowed me to kind of show my true, I'm not afraid. I'm not afraid. I've never been afraid. And so that was one of the ways that I was able to show that. I'm not afraid.
Got it. That's interesting because it seems like it sort of, well, not doesn't seem like it feels as if it's directly applicable to what you're doing. One of the things you said earlier was ensure you know who you're writing for, know your audience, right? And if you're writing that type of fiction and it's written different by men and different by women, right? It
Absolutely.
seems
Yeah.
like it's a nice fit with the theory that you had.
Yeah. It was it was very interesting that because the erotic literature for women was a lot more subtle than the erotic, the erotica like the Henry Miller and all that was like very,
Right.
and that was, I think, I'm not sure if Henry Miller was banned, but anyway, it was, Lady Chatterley's lover and those kinds of things. But it was
Right.
really very, very interesting to see the differences in, viewpoints.
Got it. What's I'm having a hard time moving on from this topic. I guess I'm curious how that becomes like a class and becomes the focus because you could think of other audiences that um writing for an engineer versus writing for a literature
Yeah,
major. So
yeah.
I'm curious what it was about that specifically that sort of caught your interest. It was rebellious in
It
nature, I
was,
get it,
I
but
think it was, I think that it was the rebellion, and then I didn't want to do the same crap that everybody else was doing. I mean, it wasn't like I was some erotica aficionado. I was not. I mean, this was my
right,
first foray into it too. I wasn't really that familiar with it, but I thought, and I don't really remember um why I chose that topic, but I
right,
do know that it, as you can imagine, allowed me to kind of stand out from, a lot of the other graduate students who were doing the same old mundane, mundane stuff. So there was that. And then I got to read part of it during my defense, and I picked again, and I picked the juiciest thing I could find to read during my defense. I was like, yeah, I'm reading this just to watch
in
them.
the hopes they wouldn't have many follow-ups, I suppose.
Right, exactly. No follow-up. Well, yeah, that sounds good. Yeah. Okay. Moving
Let's move
on.
on.
Moving on. What is it? Who was it who said, it was someone in the Supreme Court that said, I don't know how to define pornography, but I know it when I see it. I forget who said that, but anyway. And that was part of it too. What's pornography and how do we define it and who gets to define it?
It's interesting. So let's talk about some of your pivot points. And
Okay.
so up to this point, what I think where we're at is you were in a program that was just not you and you were struggling to survive. You didn't have a lot of support as a young lady and into your adolescence and adult years, even. It seems as if you didn't have a lot of support and you found a supporting community there at UNC Wilmington, really fell into the department and worked until you got your PhD, now your business. But along those paths, right, there's always these pivot points we reach, and sometimes we question where we're going or et cetera. And I'm curious, what are some of those pivot points that you reached that if you had to recall and you remember now thinking, I'm really glad I chose the way I did, or I wished I would have tried something else. What are some of those pivot
Oh
points that
man,
sticks
yeah,
out to
there's a lot. I mean, I wish that if, looking back on it, obviously you can't, I wish that I had been more, how do I phrase this? I don't know how to phrase it exactly, but I wish my parents had been more supportive. I wish my parents had been more, um had helped me more with guidance. Looking back as an adult, my parents just didn't didn't really do a good job. I mean, they were my little sister and I talk about this all the time. There were four of us, and my brother was always given preferential treatment. And so there's that. I was fortunate enough, I think, to have enough wherewithal and enough ambition to know that I needed to go. When I graduated from high school, I just needed to go. I needed to get away from my dad. I feel bad I left my little sister. But I really had no choice. I had to go. In retrospect, I should have stayed at UNC Greensboro. I should have finished my degree there and not transferred based on, some whim. Getting the doctorate, there were so many times I just wanted to quit, because I don't know if you've ever gotten it sucks. I mean, it sucks. It is an awful experience. And I had one woman on my committee who obviously did not want me to graduate and was consistently putting obstacles in my path. And at my defense was asking me questions that were outside the realm of what I was even working on. And at my final defense, I answered the questions, blah, blah, blah. And then my director comes on, he goes, well, she didn't want you to graduate. And, it occurred to me at that point, I'm like, man, these people have a lot of power. She could have squashed my 5.5 years of work, and she could have just squashed it. To me, academics have way too much power. There's no accountability, and they can pretty much do whatever the hell they want to do. So am I glad I got the PhD? Maybe. I don't know. I don't know that I don't think I learned as much in my doctoral program as I did in my master's program. But again, I mean, I was driving 3.5 hours each way to the friggin' coursework, and teaching 5 classes at UNCW. So in that regard, when people tell me they don't have time to do things, I'm like, yeah, you do. You absolutely do. Because I mean, I just think that, I had no excuses. This is what I was going to do, and come hell or high water, that's what I was going to do. So I think that was a pivotal point, the tenacity of, doing that, and the strength that it takes a lot of mental fortitude to do that. Took a lot of mental fortitude for me to survive my mother's murder. I mean, if you've never experienced someone being taken from you like that, it's all, I mean, as you can imagine, it's awful. And there's a lot of, in looking back on it, we didn't grieve. We didn't do, it was kind of like she died and she's buried 2 days later, and there was no talking about it or anything like that. It was just kind of like, she's gone. And so in retrospect, I wish that we had been able to, as a family, kind of been able to grieve her, and we just didn't. And that's really unfortunate, that because I think that would have gone a long way towards helping. Because again, I don't know what to do. I just don't need to go. And so I went. But my mom was she was always trying to make money in some way. So she'd sell Avon, and she sold Tupperware, and she was a wonderful artist and gave art lessons and stuff like that. So in some ways, I think I got my entrepreneurial spirit from her, because she was always trying to do these things that, to generate income. I was sexually abused by my father. And that was nobody talked about that. I mean, that was just, nobody talked about that. And I'm quite sure that there were probably other people in the neighborhood who, kids I grew up with, who probably were experiencing the same thing, but you don't talk about it. And it's just quite an interesting phenomenon, if you will, because sexual abuse, it's not just a physical thing. It is a legacy that steals so much from you. I mean, mentally and physically, but it is something that you never get over. In some way, shape, or form, it shapes you, and it can just steal so much from you. And I feel like for me, it made me very reticent to interact with people. In other words, I felt like a lot of my life I've had a shell around me that I don't let people get close to me. And I think that's still true today, that I'm very I like people. People like me, I get along with people. But in terms of letting people in, I don't think I do that very well at all. And I'd attribute that to, the sexual abuse. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. But that's part of that. And I'm sure that there's a lot of women listening to this podcast who have experienced sexual abuse as well. And it's just an awful thing. And a lot of people never recover from it.
Pam, it was interesting is when you brought that up, you brought it up at a time period where you were talking about wanting to quit but not quitting and seeing it through to the end, although you really, at the end of the day, wasn't really digging it, right?
Yeah, right.
And the failure that you had mentioned earlier where you were in school and you just sort of threw up your hands and you were ready to be done with it. It didn't come up then, but I'm curious, is there something to take from that? I'm curious, is there something about those experiences you had, your mother's murder or your father's I don't know, I don't even know how to word it. I can't even
Sexual
imagine it.
abuse. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, I mean your father's sexual abuse that really fed your determination to.
Yeah, I mean, I think part of it is, and I don't know that this is something to be applauded, but I do think that I've spent my life trying to prove my worth, that I am worthy of being listened to, that I am an intelligent person, that I'm all these things, almost to the point of um I have to be, I have to be not perfect is probably too strong a word, but I do, I've always been obsessed with, um, you know, being in good shape and making sure I make the right impression and worrying about what people think of me. I don't do that anymore because I'm older now, but those things, it's always been this thing of proving that I am a valuable human being and that I am worth being listened to and those kinds of things. So yeah, I mean, that those things shape me. And then my mom's murder, I think, was just a way for me to, it really created a way for me to kind of escape, if you will, from my father, and that kind of thing. Not that he gave a shit at that point, but and I wasn't being abused at that point. But so I do think that it created this kind of tenacity in me that, yeah, I'll show you. I'm going to be successful, and and I'll show you that I am worthy, and that you cannot, what you did to me is not who I am, and I will not let it define me. And so I do think that there's some of that. I'm a bulldog. I don't give up. I've never given up, and I never will give up. So, whether that's part of my innate personality or whether I was shaped by events or whether it's a combination of the two, I don't know. But I do know that I am very tenacious. And
When do you feel like you first noticed that about yourself? That
my
tenacity?
tenacity,
Yeah.
I would say when probably when I went to UNCW, probably when I was accepted into UNCW, because I knew at that point that I had to make it. I had to, because I'd been out of school after I flunked out of Chapel Hill, I'd been out of school for 4 years, and I knew that I had to make it, and I knew that was, that was probably the, make or break for me. I realized, the importance of college for me anyway. I don't think it's important for everybody. That's a whole nother topic, but
Do you feel like the flunking out, as you stated at UNC, do you feel like that was the driver that really drove you to continue to?
no, because I didn't care.
Got it.
I really didn't care at that point. I was 20 and I guess 21. And I didn't even care that I
Hmm.
flunked out of Chapel Hill. It was such a miserable experience. I was really relieved that it was over. It was awful. And
Wow.
yeah, it was just awful. And a lot of it of my own making. It wasn't the school. It wasn't, I mean, well, part of it was, I mean, I couldn't find a stupid place to live on campus. I think that would have been a totally different, I think that would have been a game changer had I been able to find a place to live on campus. But I had no community, no friends, no nothing. I mean, I just took off from UNC Greensboro, where I had all kinds of friends and a community and everything else, to this unknown place that, looking back, I'm like, God, what kind of an idiot are you? Why in the hell did you do that? I left comfort for the unknown, which I guess, I mean, just like starting my business, I left the comfort of academia for the great unknown, and fortunately was successful. But I was bound and determined the business was going to be successful. I wasn't sure wasn't going to go back into academia. Ugh, awful.
Nothing ventured, nothing gained, too, right? I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah, yeah.
yeah. So talk to me a little bit about so once you sort of had this moment where you didn't get through UNC, you get into UNC Wilmington, you find an apartment that's got some great folks that are giving you great feedback. You feel like you fit. And once you got your feet under you and you started sort of pursuing that path, that writing path, what did it look to grow into that? I mean, what because you could have been a writer and been a fiction writer or poetry writer, but instead you took this path that's a little more technical, it's a little more uh,
Yeah, I think what compelled me were my students, to be quite honest with you, because I'm in touch with some of the students to this day, because I developed the technical writing course. They didn't have one, and I developed it specifically, if I can speak, specifically for those students who were physics majors and math majors and all these majors that the writing program was failing them. They had to write, but it was like they didn't know how to write. And so I think that was what that was really what really got me excited, because I saw students. So I was doing research on readability, and I saw students. I get it. I get it. This isn't English 101, which is expository writing, or English 110, which is about literature. It wasn't any of that. It was about, how do I take what I can do, my problem solving, how do I take that? Because these are great problem solvers. These are not stupid people. How do I take that and apply it to writing? Now, that obviously didn't know that when they got in the workplace they were going to have to write. They obviously didn't know those things, but it was very exciting to me to see them start to embrace writing. I had an email from a kid the other day. He used to work for IBM, and now he's working for a startup. And he messaged me on LinkedIn. He goes, you know what? He goes, the writing that the concepts I learned from you, I've been asked to write white papers for my company, and it's because of you and the things that you taught. And that to me was like, wow, that's exciting. That's so great that, because I mean, unfortunately, we think, oh, well, you're writing, you're either born knowing how to do it or you're not. You're either, left brain, right brain kind of thing. When the fact of the matter is that's not true at all. That, good writing is science-based. So those are the kinds of things when I hear from past students and, that kind of thing, that's what's exciting to me. And, or when, you go into a corporation like we do, and they're like, wow, this is just phenomenal. Really, this really helped me do what I need, what I need to do. I don't dread writing so much. I'm not saying they love writing, because they don't. Even after
Right.
they just don't. But can they be more effective at it? 100%. And that's the exciting part to me.
Got it. So that's interesting because really what drove you in the area um, was giving that feedback that was valuable feedback to folks. That's what it seems like. That's what I hear you say.
Yeah.
Is that hitting the nail on the head?
Yeah, that's hitting, that's pretty accurate. Yeah, it's just that idea of this is something I can do and it's not foreign to me. And yeah, I mean, I think that's pretty accurate.
Do you get the same satisfaction from helping, Meta,
Oh,
Pfizer,
without
those
a
large
doubt.
companies?
Yeah, because
Yeah.
we have a lot of workshops where people will say, "Oh God, I don't want to do this. I don't want to go to this workshop." And then they come back and they go, "Man, this is great. I'm really glad I did it." Because we don't go, "Oh, you don't know your prepositions." Oh. It's really about how do you problem solve, because the way that you write and the way that I write are two very different things. It doesn't mean that I'm right and you're wrong, or vice versa. How do
Right.
you solve problems? Okay, now let's take that and let's apply that to writing. And here are some concepts, and here are some things. We'll have clients who are not, well, I want to see a before and an after. Well, before and after isn't going to do you any good, because what's a before for what you don't know the context, you don't know the writer, you don't know the reader, you don't know the outcome, you don't know any of that. So, and it's just, I mean, it's the same problem with chat GPT. They spit out crap and, oh, it's better. Is it?
Right.
Is it better?
Very
I
true.
don't know. Are you getting the action that is the reader doing what you want the reader to do? That's how you measure success,
Mm,
right? And so what's good to you and what's good to me, two different things, and that's okay. There's no
mm.
right answer when it comes to writing,
Got it.
except is the reader doing what you need the reader to do? That's the only measure.
Got it. It seems like you have a really passionate need to communicate through writing exactly what it is that the reader needs to pick up on. Where do you think that drive comes from? What's the root of that?
I don't, that's a really good question. I don't know. I'm very passionate about the business. I'm very passionate about what it really bothers me that people believe that writing, again, as I mentioned earlier, is something you're born with and that people can't improve. That's just such bullshit.
Mm,
So that's one thing I'm really passionate about is, yes, people can improve their writing skills. Can they think? Yes, they can. Great. They can improve their writing skills. So, you know, it's just I guess I'm passionate about it because I know what the truth is. And the truth is not what we learn in academia, and it's not the myths that surround writing.
right.
You're either born with it or you're not, or it's got to follow a structure, or you got to do the 5 sentence paragraph, or you have to know grammar. All that's crap. That matters.
Right.
None of that shit matters at all. And so it's frustrating to me that there's this deep rooted belief that those are all the things that matter when it comes to writing, and they don't matter at all. You can be a terrible grammarian and be a great writer.
Yeah, I feel like that dovetails really well with the other time when you mentioned that you had this rebellious streak in you where you were like, no one's going to do anything with erotic literature in academia, so I'm going to do that to prove that the different audience requires a different writing style.
Exactly.
And, and then you feel like you've got a drive to prove that this, sort of idea about you're either born a writer or not. No, you can learn to.
Exactly.
Right. Right. And I heard another through line where it's like I was going to show that no, I'm going to make that tenacity. And when you think about that and you look at it, what do you feel like is the driver for that sort of need to set the record straight, I would say.
Oh, that's a really good question. I don't know, except that I know, I know what I know about writing, and I know what I know about professionals and how they can learn to write. And I guess it's frustrating that people believe all this stuff about writing that just isn't true. It's just not true. And it frustrates me that academia does such a terrible job of teaching people how to write and how to review. And
Mm,
there are better ways. It's like anything else. There's a better way to do it, but nobody's talking about it, right? And so it's just like, well, we have to do it this way, and this is the way we do it, instead of thinking about, for each individual, there's a he or she has, or they, whatever, has a different, may have a different way of getting to the solution, and that's perfectly okay. But most people don't
mm,
have the tools, because they think of writing as this kind of linear process. You go to you do the outline, and then you do the draft, and then and then you're gonna, done, instead of thinking about writing as a very messy process. And then, organizations are awful because they're like, oh, we want better writing, but then they don't give people the time and the space that they need to write well. It's like,
right.
oh, we got to get it. It's 5 o'clock. Reports due at, reports due at 5 o'clock. It's 4 o'clock. Got to get it done. And so there's a lot of lip service paid to it. But at the end of the day, most organizations aren't, they don't treat writing as, or the document as, the deliverable any more than, the writers do. So I feel like I'm on a mission, because we have the data, we have the science to prove that it's not what you're taught in academia. We know this. It's based, it's science.
Right. It's a big picture question, Pam. Okay.
Okay.
So imagine years from now, right? You're speaking with your great great grandchildren or your great grandchild, and you only have a few minutes to share some life lessons or wisdom with them. And it's the kind of advice you want them to remember, right? That it came from you. What would you tell those kids about life, about failure, about success? What would be your choice
I would
to tell
say,
those
don't be
kids?
afraid. I
Just
would say,
to
don't be afraid. Don't don't
right,
be afraid. You're going to fail. You're going to fail a lot. And I know it's a cliche, but if you don't, if you never fail, you don't succeed. I think a lot of kids now are too sheltered from failure, and they need to fall on their ass, and they need to learn from it. And again, but I would say, do not be afraid. If you fail, great. You've learned, right? And again, I know that's a cliche, but take risks. Don't be afraid. You have one life. You have one. You don't get 25 retakes. You've got one. Make it. Do it. If you got a feeling about it and you want to do it, then by God, do it.
trying to figure out what it was exactly that drew you to writing. And then I realized as you're talking, I realized, well, it's not necessarily writing. It was validation, right? And I think that was interesting to me. That was interesting. I liked hearing that.
No,
And then
yeah, I mean, I think it was validation. And, to this day, I mean, I struggle to, when things like, I'll give you a pickleball court's a really good example. If I'm not playing well, I just get really down on myself. It's just a fucking game, but I
yeah,
get really, really down on myself, and it's stupid. And I know it's stupid, but I just have this, I've got to be the best, and I've got to be, which is not a great way to live, to be quite honest
no,
with you, because everything's a crisis if you don't achieve, but certainly there were some, good things that have come out of it, but yeah. I am
I'm
who I am.
I'm the same way too. I've always had this, I don't know, superhero complex where it's
Yeah,
never enough. It's just the ultimate. And that's, I mean, it's damaging to you, um, mentally, health wise. It's probably damaging to your kids, right? Because they're seeing
absolutely.
this insanity of whether you want to call it tenacity or just,
Yeah, yeah,
I don't know, in my own life, it almost feels like I beat my head against the wall a lot of times just for the point of beating my head against the wall, right?
yeah,
It
yeah,
doesn't
yeah.
make
No, I know. It's to your point, it's just, it can be, and for me, I think it has been damaging because I don't, you know, it's just, the negative self-talk and the, oh, you're a mess, it's like, I was on the pickleball court. This was probably a month ago, and this woman says, God, you talk so badly to yourself. And I'm like, but I do. I mean, I do.
right,
I miss a shot, and it's like the friggin' end of the world instead of
right.
I missed a shot and move on. It's really difficult for me to not equate mistakes with who I am as a human being when they have nothing to do with that. But yeah, I guess it's the type A overachiever people we are, you
It's
know.
interesting that you say that because when I've seen myself do that, but I've seen others do that too in the corporate environment where they're beating themselves up. And every time I see that, I say, is this how you would talk to like your wife or your dad or your
You
mom?
wouldn't.
But
No,
you talk to yourself that way. It just doesn't, it
it makes
doesn't,
no sense.
right.
Makes no,
Right. And I,
you got to, I mean, this is the person you have to live with every single day, and you tear this person down. But you
right.
would never say that to your spouse or your child or anything. But it's weird, very weird.
The other part I liked about your story is it really felt like you found your spot when people were available and open with you and supportive. And what I like
Yes.
about your story is that really to me what it looks like was you pursued a path where you could do the same for someone else. Like you
Yeah.
wanted to share that thing that turned you on as a human being, for lack of a better word, it seems to me.
Yeah, I never
Um,
thought about it that way, but I think that's probably accurate. Yeah.
I like it. That's a good that's a good note to end on. But when we end here, I'll do. Let me ask you, Pam, where can folks find you if they're interested in your services or if they're just
Yeah.
interested in reaching out,
I
speaking with
appreciate
you?
that. Yeah, so it's hurleywrite.com, HurleyWrite, as in I'm gonna write a letter. Lots of people spell it WRIGHT. I'm also on LinkedIn, Pam Hurley, and Pam at hurleywrite.com. So I appreciate that.
Do you have any pickleball related profiles or dance contest related?
No, when I get to be a professional pickleball player, I'll let you know. But
Well, I
no.
appreciate you taking time to speak to us. I appreciate you sharing some
Oh no,
pretty
thank you very
pretty
much.
touchy things. So
Yeah,
thank
no, no,
you.
no. It was good. I know you and I have discussed some of that stuff, and I think that if there's people who can relate to my life and some of the experiences that I've had, that's awesome. But it's certainly not something that the things that have happened to me, I'm not ashamed of, because they have molded me into um, the tenacious rebel I am today.
There you go. Pam Hurley, everyone, the tenacious rebel that is on a mission to teach you how to write for the audience that is reading your work. Right. And great to talk to you today. And just let me finish by saying, look, thanks for spending time with us online in the mirror. If today's conversation gave you something, right, a spark, a question, a shift, share it with someone who needs it. We're building a community of people who refuse to stay broken, who rise, who evolve, right? Just like Pam rose and evolved, had a setback in college, had a setback from childhood, had a mother who was murdered, right? Had a father who was sexually abusive, and still she rose and found tenacity, determination, and a willingness to conquer. Thanks again for being
Thank
here. And
you.
until next time, stand up, recalibrate, grow, evolve, that surge. And remember, the line is out there. Excuse me. And remember, the line isn't out there, it's in the mirror.